So we can now finally start. I want to report today about the latest developments in Samba regarding Active Directory domain control, which is a long-awaited feature in Samba that has been worked on since a long time. Maybe some words about Samba initially. The Samba project was started 20 years ago. It is, I'd like to say, the open source SMB file server that runs on Unix platforms, especially on Linux. And well, this is the webpage of the community. It has been used for various reasons in the past, mostly for file serving, but also for domain control in the classical NT style domain model. It was used for its reliability and scalability, its performance also. It is used in many products, in professional products and storage appliances, and from the very small NAS appliances for home usage until the very big data center appliances. Maybe some words about the Samba team. There are roughly 15 to 20 active developers of Samba worldwide. The Samba team page states roughly double the number, but really active developers currently are this number. And there have been, since a couple of years now, basically two streams of development, Samba 3 and Samba 4. I will tell a little bit in more detail about these two development streams in a minute, but first let me tell you a little bit of my company, SerNet, company I'm working for. Well, SerNet is an open source Linux-centric company located here in Germany. The main office is in Göttingen. We also have office in Berlin. It was founded in the mid-90s, and currently we have somewhere between 40 and 50 employees. Little less than 10 of them are working in the Samba area. We are doing development and consulting as a service for our customers that use Samba on a professional basis. And since we have 5 Samba core team developers under contract, we can offer from simple support in configuration and troubleshooting up to bug fixing and feature development in Samba with a direct connection to upstream development. So usually the work we are doing is going directly into the next upstream releases. Since we are supporting customers that are running Samba in their production environment, we mostly have focused our development up to now on file serving, that is the Samba 3 development. And we by the way, we also host the annual Samba developer and user conference called Samba Experience or Samba XP that is taking place each spring in Göttingen, in the center of Germany. This year it will be in early May from 8th to 11th. So our company's booth is right over there, so we have information about the conference. If you have any questions after the talk, feel free to come over and we can discuss things. And we also have information for the conference. So this is the occasion where you can meet most of the Samba developers from all over the world, Australia, the US, and some other countries in Europe. Okay, now for the two variants of Samba. One is Samba 3, currently at version 3.6.3. It is present in basically all the Linux distributions. It runs on Solaris and other Unix platforms. The main focus here is the file server and the Windows Active Directory connector, which makes this file server a member in a given Windows domain. It also supports this old-fashioned NT-style domain control, which does not make use of Kerberos and LDAP and all the nice features that the Windows administrators like so much. One important thing that has made a difference in the past couple of years in the choice of Samba as a file server, let's say over Windows file servers, is the ability to do all active clustering, meaning we have a cluster file system, we run Samba on each of the nodes. We can scale out, meaning we can add nodes to the file system cluster, we add Samba nodes, and we can serve more requests at a time. That was unique to our file server for a couple of years. Now when Microsoft is heading towards scale-out clustering in Windows 8, which is not released yet, but currently this is a point of uniqueness here, and this made us especially scalable. On the file server part, we have some 10 developers actively working currently. The numbers vary always a little. And now for Samba 4, the actual topic of my talk. The Samba 4 released or development stream was started as early as 2003 or late 2003 or early 2004, so it's quite a long time. It was started right at the release of Samba 3.0, and it was started as a complete rewrite. At the time, the code base and the whole design in Samba was not really very clean. The original goal was to make Samba clusterable in an all-active clustered fashion. And the rationale at that point was that it wouldn't be possible with the code structure at that time. What happened is that meanwhile Samba 3 has been made cluster aware, and Samba 4 has very soon afterwards switched its target to implement the Active Directory domain controller. So in Windows 2000, Microsoft originally implemented and first shipped Active Directory, a whole new log-on server model based on Kerberos authentication, LDAP, user database, group policies, and so on and so forth. And this was something that has by now become very important for single sign-on and user management. Samba 3 has never had this target to implement this, and Samba 4 development has been pursuing this target since a couple of years now. There is a varying number of people working actively on the Samba 4 code. Currently, it's a little less than the people working mainly on Samba 3 file server code, but this is roughly the number. So, the main question is whether Samba 4 will finally be released this year. I mean, it has been long told, Samba 4 will come next year, whatever next year meant at the time. And but now we honestly think we are a good path to finally release 4.0 this year. So it is on the horizon somewhere. Maybe you can spot it. It's because we are now we think that some of the features of Active Directory implemented are ready enough to be shipped, stable enough to be shipped, so that we can support this to a broader user community and not just the alpha testers. Well, some other features are not ready yet, so these features will be added in later releases, 4.1 and whatever. So specifically, I will give a little more detail about that later, but when you want to run in a small environment where you just have a single domain, no trust domains or subdomains, and you just want to have one domain controller, or maybe at least not a heterogeneous environment, but just a couple of Samba domain controllers, then this will work. We are certain that this is stable enough to be shipped. There are features like trusted domain support that are not yet completely implemented. These will have to wait until later releases. So why one important point here, why also Samba 4 hasn't been released yet, is that it will be, just by the numerics, be the successor of Samba 3.x. So what we can't really do is, we can't ship something called 4, which doesn't implement all the nice features of the file server that are in Samba 3.6, for instance. So while Samba 4 had been started as a complete rewrite and had just a very rudimentary file server, our current progress is on integrating the Samba 3 file server and put it together with the Samba 4. So 4.0 will have to work file server wise, just like Samba 3.x did, Samba 3.6. So the file server development and the Active Directory server development will converge into what will be 4.0. Right? And so the question is, how do we do this? There were ideas of really putting together the code bases completely before doing this, but this is a huge task and would have delayed the release for a couple of other years probably. So some time ago, in fact, the so-called Frankie idea was born. The idea was this: take the best parts of both of the Samba worlds, the Samba 3 world and the Samba 4 world, stitch them together to release a product. Don't re-implement everything that Samba 3 has done in Samba 4, because this is an infinite task basically, but just run the Samba 3 file server and the Samba 4 Active Directory domain controller in a well-defined combined environment. The idea is quite nice, but also this has proven to be, well, there's the devil in the details here. You have a lot of ports the daemons are listening on. Active Directory uses the Kerberos ports, the LDAP ports. A couple of RPC services are served by the Active Directory server. Then we have the file server, which traditionally listens on port 139 and port 455 and so on. And these have to talk to each other. So the IPC infrastructure had been extended to make these two talk together. And yeah, what has already been done in that respect? We have by now again a combined code repository, a combined code base, and more components are shared by the two. Then we have started the integration of the SMBD file server with the Samba 4 Active Directory controller with a module called CIFS, which is designed to replace the built-in Samba 4 file server. This has been a major part of work that has been done by some of the developers. An important point also for Active Directory is DNS integration. The whole auto-detection, the lookup of where are the domain controllers for my domain is done via DNS, special service records stored in DNS. And originally this was very, very cumbersome to configure, while most of the directory server was already in place. Setting up a DNS server with the bind software was really cumbersome. So EndoTrigel basically had written a plugin for bind that could be filled with a backend, with a generic backend for Samba 4. And so this was basically the trick that made, with a pretty recent version of bind, the setup not so complicated anymore. Before that, it was really, we would need a developer to really set this up. So with the current version of bind, it's reasonably easy to set this up, but still, it should be completely easy. And so there was even a project started to write an internal DNS server in Samba so that it could be run completely autonomously without the need to configure bind. So currently you have the choice whether you use the internal one or if you use bind and integrate it more with your environment. Oops. The main thing is that both of these configurations store their DNS data in the LDAP, in the DNS partition, in the internal LDAP server in Samba 4. They use the same backend store, just the different server filling these. So these were important stepping stones towards a releasable Samba 4. A little more implementation of these combinations and making the setup of a combined Samba a little more smooth is still required, but we do actually hope to present at least a beta version of Samba 4 at the Samba XP conference in May. So maybe even a release candidate. So we really are very positive to be able to release Samba 4.0 this year. The discussions about how to do this technically and which components to choose are pretty heated, actually, heatedly discussed in the Samba team. And at some point last year, in November, I think it was, this discussion even popped up on the public Samba technical mailing list. And this was such a controversial discussion that I think one day afterwards there was a big report about this discussion on Linux Weekly News at wn.net. So you can read it up there. It was quite entertaining. But this is really always a very interesting thing to watch actually the Samba developer crowd do their work and discuss the things. This can become very emotional, and you can read it up on the Samba technical archives. Okay, I said this, the Samba 4 will not support every thinkable installation, but a limited set of installations will be officially supported. So here is what currently works. A single domain with a single domain controller. This is something that we definitely want to support, and we believe is already fairly stable right now. As I said, if you have multiple domain controllers, then there are some things not completely implemented yet. The so-called file system replication is still missing. So in the replication in a multi-domain controller setup in Windows, you have the directory, which replicates the user database, DNS partitions, whatever. And you have the so-called file system replication, which replicates especially the so-called sysvol share and the netlogon share. The sysvol share is the place where Windows stores its group policy objects. And so this is vital that the replication for this is there, at least if you want to replicate with Windows domain controllers. So the directory replication is basically done. This is implemented and it works. The file system replication is not complete yet, so we can't claim that we fully support a multi-DC setup. For Samba only setups, we can of course mimic the replication by using some rsync hacks, some cron jobs, some notify business. So there will be instructions for that, but it will not be among the officially supported scenarios. So once you set up such a domain with Samba, which is fairly easy, I will demonstrate this in a bit, then you only have to point your Windows Workstation's DNS entry to the server, and basically you should be able to join the machine. It will detect that this is an Active Directory. This will work just like joining against a Windows domain controller. And this is very important for the Windows administrators. Remember with Samba 3, usually a lot of the administration was on the Linux command line or with some LDAP browser, LDAP command line tools. And for Samba 4 this will be different, because Samba 4 implements all the RPC services centered around Active Directory. Basically, the Windows administrators will hopefully hardly notice that there's a Samba and not a Windows server behind the domain, because the Microsoft Management Console, the Active Directory users and computers can be used to administer the domain. Group policies can be also managed with the Microsoft Management Console, and it's also possible to do schema extensions, just as with Windows domain controllers. And a very interesting point is that we just managed a couple of days ago to integrate the Zarafa groupware solution with a Samba 4 domain. So this is really nice. You have a nice open source groupware solution. You have a nice Windows compatible domain controller based on open source. You can integrate them both. So this is a nice couple actually. So this is not yet. I mean, there will be maybe a couple of scripts, even a couple of LDIF patches that we can apply to the Samba schema partition. And I think over there at our booth we will have also a demo setup that you can watch Zarafa working against Samba domain. So maybe as a background, Zarafa comes with a mode for integrating it into Windows Active Directory, but this is a Windows executable that does a couple of steps. And what we've basically done is we have looked at what this does and reproduced this in the Samba environment. So these are the things that already work. Okay. One thing that I want to demonstrate you in a couple of minutes is what I just call the SerNet Samba 4 appliance. So currently, when you want to try out Samba 4, there are packages in Ubuntu and Debian Experimental, for instance. But to my experience, this was still a little difficult to use. So what we did is we said, okay, before we go direction beta, we wanted to make it as easy as possible to try this. And so we did a small appliance, meaning software appliance, just a VM image or a installation ISO image that you can use to produce your own installation. It will install a small stock Debian squeeze setup. We'll do a couple of modifications to the system, install it with a minimal graphical interface, and then you have a script called DC Promo that will just guide you through the setup of your Samba. So it has a pre-installed Samba then, and you just have to do a couple of clicks, wait a little bit, and then you have your installed Samba Active Directory domain. This will soon after Cebit be available for download under enterprisesamba.org, which is a website that SerNet is running, where we also upload current Samba file server packages for enterprise distributions like Red Hat Enterprise, SUSE Enterprise, and Debian. So you will find the VM images and probably the installation ISO image, so that you can choose to install it in your own virtualization or even on hardware and just do some experiments with that. Okay. So now the plan is to do a little live demonstration on that. Let's just check how much time I've got. Oh, that's good. So if there are any questions before diving into that, please go ahead. Or interrupt me while I'm demonstrating, and you can of course come over to the booth later on. Okay. So, where are we? So, okay, I'm running an KVM here on my machine. This is the virtual machine that runs the appliance image. I just put in this pre-installed image here. I will just start it up. So it's configured so that it does an automatic login of some user. After a successful DC promo, you get the choice to just turn off the automatic login and give a password for the user. But this is what happens at first. Come. Now. So, here we go. There's a little display problem. Okay, so is that by any means readable? I guess not so. So it asks me, do I want to set up a Samba 4 domain? I say yes. Okay. What should be the domain controller? Its name. It's pre-configured as DC. I'm sticking with that. So it's not nice GTK. It's just a little dialog script, but I mean a later version might have a more appealing GUI. The domain is proposed to be called samba.private. Let's keep it like that. The net bias, the old style domain name, Samba, that also sounds okay. So I should enter a password for the domain administrator. I have to choose a reasonably complex one, just like for Windows, be warned. So I have to confirm it. allow schema updates. Oh yes, why not? So it gives me a summary before proceeding. Do you want to set up Samba 4 with your configuration now? This may take a while. Yes. Okay, now it pops up another dialog down here, just showing the progress. This is actually the output of the so-called provision script that does all the work. It creates the databases, it fills the DNS partitions, fills all partitions in my Active Directory. The so-called SAM LDB is the basic database. SAM for Security Account Manager, it's Windows name for its internal user database. LDB is Samba's internal database format with an LDAP-like API to access the data. Okay, the schema is configured. Configuration, data, display specifiers. So as it said, it may take some time. The data is filled into the database. I'm really sorry for the crappy display here. I hope you get the idea. Self-join, so users and groups are filled, the standard groups that are always there, standard users. Samba is making itself known to its own domain. The so-called self-join. 60%, gosh, this really takes a while. So, what I'm going to demonstrate afterwards is I have this Windows 7 machine in the back. I will join it and I will just do a very quick demonstration how you can use Windows 7 to then add users, add group policies and see that they are really applied. Something like that. Given the time is still sufficient. So I have some 15 minutes left if I'm not mistaken, that's good. Okay. So we are, I guess, almost done. Maybe if someone has a question now, it's a good time because this may take another minute. Yes, please. Is there a microphone? Oh, okay.
What is the source that you use as a reference while developing Samba?
Okay.
And a second one, are there any patent issues with Samba?
So, second question first. No, there aren't any patent issues. Secondly, originally, before there was Microsoft documentation, the source was just inspection of things that are going on the wire. So usually we have a network sniffer, a packet dissector, Wireshark, that we extend to be able to dissect the Windows packages and to understand the protocol on the wire. That was the original work that created the first Samba implementations. And then some time ago, a couple of years ago, there was this EU court against Microsoft, where Microsoft was sued and was obliged to open up the documentation, the specification of its protocol on the wire. Not the implementation behind that, but just what do the packets that come out across the wire mean. And this is the only thing we need. We do our own implementation in the back end, we just need to talk correctly on the wire with Windows. That's what we do. And so, by now, due to this European case, sorry, I need to restart that, sorry for that. And due to this documentation that is now available, of course, many of the completely unclear points have now become more clear. So there is documentation, it's available on mscn.com. There's this library, open specifications, you can look into the server protocols and so on. Afterwards, of course, there are bugs. There are incomplete things in there, so we still do a lot of this network inspection. We run Wireshark. We write our own test cases to understand the behavior of Windows more concretely, and then we implement it in our server and make sure that the same test cases we wrote against Windows work the same way against Samba. And when there are things that are unclear in the documentation, Microsoft has established something called DocHelp, where we can ask questions. Microsoft is even has to keep the documentation correct and up to date, and so this works actually quite nicely by now. And so documentation and network inspection, and the back end we are on our own completely. Okay, so this is now done. We see the summary, the domain SID that has been created. Samba.private is the DNS domain name, and so let's exit this one here. Okay, I'm now prompted to press OK to start Samba with this configuration. Okay, this is done. What is this? Ah, okay. This user was up to now passwordless and automatically logged in. I'm giving it a password. Disable automatic login. Yes, of course. So, what do we have now? We have something called opt Samba sbin Samba running as a daemon. I'm sorry, maybe I can enlarge the script here. Does this work? It doesn't seem to have any effect at all. Well, okay, so I'm sorry for that. No. What I just wanted to show you is that this Samba daemon is listening on a couple of ports. Well, here we see it. It listens on one port, especially you see port 135, for instance. This is the endpoint mapper port that is used to negotiate where the RPC services are listening. We have Kerberos. We even have in this line with a 122.69:53, we see that Samba is also listening on the DNS port, in this case TCP. And we can, there is something called Samba tool. This is the management tool for Samba, the Samba 4 suite. I can, for instance, see Samba tool user list and see what users are there in the system. There are just a couple of pre-provisioned users here: administrator, Kerberos, ticket granting user, guest user, and so on. And what I'm now going to do is I'm going to switch over to this Windows 7 box, and I'm going to log in as an administrative user here. So, welcome. And now I am going to join this computer into the domain. Change settings. This computer is a member of the work group called work group. I'm going to add it to the domain. Ah, no, wait. Let's just, before that, check. I'm going to see this. Change adaptive settings. Just verify or check whether the domain the DNS server, where is it? Properties. I'm a little slow with Windows always. Properties. DNS. Oh, DNS already points to the IP address of the Samba box. This step I haven't rolled back apparently. So usually this is the first step. Point the DNS to the Samba box. Then enter into this dialog. Change domain samba.private. Okay, it asked me for a user, administrator, complicated password. And now wait a little bit. Cross your fingers. As always, it's the same with Windows, of course. Welcome. Please. This takes a long time. Hey, welcome to the domain samba.private. So this is the first step. Of course, we have to reboot now. I will restart my computer now. Luckily, this is reasonably fast in this virtualization, so the first step is done. Afterwards, I will be able to log in as the domain administrator and configure new users in the domain. I think at least as this is as much as I can show you. Okay. Yes, please. Oh, there will be a microphone.
Thanks. We can also use the assistant, the domain controller integration assistant, because then you use the shortcut to integrate in the domain, but then the administrator user is not administrator of the Windows computer, which sometimes make...
I have to admit that I don't quite know which integration you're talking about, but if it takes...
When you try to integrate the machine in the domain, you use instead of being in the work group, you push the
domain button.
The domain button.
This is what I just did.
Yes, what you did. But you have another way which is more
with the net command, net domain join something.
No. You have an assistant which is integrated. That
if it uses standard Windows network protocols, it should work just the same way.
Okay. Because with Samba 3, I had some problems integrating the user inside the admin group.
Well, it should be tested. I don't know the exact command, so we can try this later maybe. Okay, let's check. Samba, no, switch user. New user, I need to specify the domain. Log on to Samba. I'm doing samba.private administrator, password, complicated. Hey, this works. I can use and log in as the domain user. New profile, so it's preparing my desktop. Takes a little, and once this is done, I still have like 4 minutes, so chances are that I can at least create a user on the domain. So where is it? Over here we have the appliance. There is this. Oh, here we are. What I now can do is I have installed the Windows remote server management utilities that you can download from Microsoft. So on the server installations, they are there anyways. On the desktop installations, you have to reinstall them. So, but I do have it. Where is it? Active Directory. No. Users and computers. There it is. It pops up. It presents my domain. I want to add a new user. I choose to call it user1. User1. I need to give a password, which is also reasonably complicated. I didn't yet change the policies for the passwords. I finish. You see a new user 1 down here, and over there you see the new user 1 popping up right below. So this user has just been added to the Active Directory domain. This has worked. And so maybe now in 3 minutes I can fire up the MMC, Microsoft Management Console. I open the Group Policy Manager. So here we have group policy, Samba, domains, Samba private, group policy objects. I'm creating a new one. I call it restricted. I could show you over there that it's already present in the domain. I will not do that now. I will instead edit it and add some restriction. Okay. There it is. Policies. No, sorry. User configuration policies, administrative templates, desktop. Prohibit user from manually read. No. Hide. Where is it? What I wanted to show you. Hide and disable all items on the desktop. So desktop will be empty and you will not be able to choose it. I do this. Double click. Yeah, there it is. Enabled. Oh, this resolution is too small, so I have to scroll down. Okay. Now, let's switch back to the users. Let's define a new, where is it? No. Sorry, wrong one. Create a new organizational unit called restricted. The naming is a little bad. And now going to close this. I am. Where is it? Domains, Samba private, group policy objects, restricted. Where is the restricted folder here? File, refresh. There is a restricted group policy objects. I'm going to link this into the restricted OU. Okay. I am going to. We have this here now inside. Okay. Let's just see the settings here. This takes too long. Okay, we have the desktop hide and disable. The only thing I am going to do now is users and computers. I'm going to move the user one into this Sorry. What is that? I'm going to use this user into the restricted OU. Moving, yes. This is gone. Just a very brief thing. Log off. Switch user. Other user, user one. So the user can log in. I created this before and I put it into the restricted group policy so that it should not have anything on the desktop and should not be able to, for instance, to right click on the desktop to change it. Which is different from the administrator's desktop. Okay. Preparing a desktop. Okay. So the desktop is empty and right clicking does nothing. So this is the end of my presentation basically. This is what I wanted to demonstrate, so that's it. Thanks a lot for your attention, and if there are any questions over at booth number E55, we can discuss this to more extent.